It's nice to have you join us on the Midday International News Desk on ECWA Television Africa. I am Lois Shiraki, and here are news stories at this hour. In Asia, Saudi-led coalition says over 260 Yemen rebels killed. The Saudi Arabia-led coalition said on Sunday over 260 Houthi rebels were killed in fighting over the past 3 days near Yemen's strategic city of Marib. The killings of the rebels are the latest among hundreds the coalition claims have been killed in recent battles around the internationally recognized government's last mainstay in oil-rich northern Yemen. It was impossible to independently confirm the death toll, and the Iran-aligned Houthis seldom comment on losses. The coalition said, and I quote, 36 military vehicles were destroyed and more than 264 rebel fighters were killed in raids in the past 72 hours. The attacks took place in Al-Jawba, 50 kilometers, 30 miles south of Marib, and Al-Qasra, 30 kilometers, 70 miles to the northwest. For the past 2 weeks, the coalition has reported almost daily air raids around Marib. The Saudi Arabia-led coalition said it killed 160 Houthi rebels in raids south of Marib last week. The Houthis commenced a major push to seize Marib in February and have changed their offensive since September after a pause. In Taiwan, Taiwan knocks on United Nations door 50 years after leaving. In Taipei, Taiwan, on October 25th, some 50 years ago, the Republic of China, ORC, the official name for Taiwan, was formally barred from the United Nations by a vote of the General Assembly and replaced by the People's Republic of China, PRC, which had taken power in Beijing at the end of the country's civil war in 1949. The ROC government had escaped to the island of Taiwan with lots of refugees as the communists took power, but continued to hold the seat of China at the United Nations and was a permanent member of the Security Council with veto power. Despite being exiled, officials in Taipei had the backing of the US thanks to fears in the West that communism might sweep through Asia. The ROC had promised to return by the 1970s, but by then it was obvious to many United Nations members its government no longer represented the hundreds of millions of people living across the Taiwan Strait in the now communist-controlled People's Republic of China, PRC. The resolution on admitting Peking, also known as Resolution 2758, called for member states to restore the rights of the People's Republic of China in Beijing as the only lawful representatives of China to the United Nations. After years of trying at the request of Chinese ally Albania, the resolution finally passed in the General Assembly. Since then, Resolution 2758 has become one of the most defining documents in the modern history of Taiwan. Margaret Lewis, a professor at Seton Hall University Law School in the United States, whose research focuses on China and Taiwan, said, "But while it once concerned United Nations representation, it has now been broadly interpreted to support China's claims to Taiwan and isolate the democracy internationally." Today, Taiwan only has 15 diplomatic allies left, reduced down from 22 since the pro-Taiwan president Tsai Ing-wen was elected in 2016. She was returned to power in a landslide 4 years later. Colombia to extradite Int'L to the U.S. as soon as possible. Colombia plans to extradite the man it calls the world's most dangerous drug trafficker to the United States, where he is wanted on a number of charges. On Saturday, Dairo Antonio Usaga, also known as Int'L, was arrested by Colombia's armed forces during an operation in a rural area of Colombia's Urabá region. The incursion involved more than 500 members of Colombia's special forces and 22 helicopters. Justice Minister Wilson Ruiz on Sunday said Colombia's government will file a petition on Monday with the Andean country's Supreme Court to extradite Int'L to the United States, adding the process could take 4 weeks to complete. Extradition awaits all those who commit international crimes, Defense Minister Diego Molano said in Nicoklai, close to where Otoniel was caught. Otoniel is accused of exporting hundreds of tons of cocaine each year and had been on the wanted list of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency for years. The United States authorities had offered $5 million for information leading to his capture. Reports from Putoga said that the U.S. had first indicted Otoniel back in 2009 and additional charges were filed in New York and Miami in 2015. According to information provided by Colombia's national police, Otoniel was the leader of the drug trafficking group Clan del Golfo, or Gulf Clan, which operates in 12 of Colombia's 32 provinces and counts some 3,800 members. Red Cross calls for immediate help for PNG after record COVID spike. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, IFRC, has said intensive international action is essential to help Papua New Guinea, PNG, deal with a record surge in COVID-19 cases that is devastating the country's health system. The latest wave of COVID-19 has seen PNG report the highest number of daily cases since the pandemic began in March 2020. According to the latest government data, the country reported 376 new cases on Saturday and is dealing with nearly 3,000 active cases of the disease. Hospitals were full and patients were being turned away in provincial areas as well as the capital, Port Moresby. PNG Red Cross Secretary General Uvenema Rova said. Rova said in a statement on Monday, urgent efforts and extra support are needed in healthcare to prevent a massive loss of life in the coming days and weeks. In all areas of PNG, we are extremely concerned that the risks of hospitalization and death from COVID-19 are shooting up due to limited health infrastructure, high rates of illnesses, all combined by poor access to safe water, hygiene and sanitation facilities. According to official data, PNG's vaccine rollout has been far slower than any in many other parts of the region, with only about 2% of the country's population having received the vaccine. The government data does not give details on the number of doses received, but Oxford University's Our World in Data says only 0.67% of people are fully vaccinated. According to experts, the rollout is being hindered by misinformation, vaccine hesitancy, and the logistics of delivering the vaccines around the country's mountainous terrain and remote coastal villages. John Fleming, IFRC's Asia Pacific Head of Health, said if this COVID surge continues at such an alarming speed, PNG's delicate health system is at risk of collapse. It is vital that emergency healthcare services are increased to prevent greater suffering and loss of life. On Sunday, Missouri hit by tornadoes, quarter-size hail and strong winds. Tornadoes touched down all over northern Missouri on Sunday, along with quarter-inch size hail and strong winds of 50 to 60 mph. Pictures posted by storm chasers showed buildings collapsed and tractors overturned as the storms rolled through parts of the state northeast of Kansas City. An image of Purdue, a small town in northern Missouri, showed a torn-down building and debris across the ground. The National Weather Service's Kansas City Division tweeted shortly before 5 p.m., "If you live northeast of Purdue, take shelter now. We are seeing a strong circulation on radar and it has been confirmed by the fire department. It's unclear if the storms have resulted in any injuries or deaths." A tornado which is in effect for much of eastern Missouri through 10 p.m. as severe thunderstorms are expected to move northeast into west central Illinois this evening. Now in Africa, Abdallah Hamdok, Sudan's prime minister, under house arrest. The country's Ministry of Information said in a statement posted on Facebook in Khartoum, Sudan, Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok has been placed under house arrest by military forces. According to images from the scene, Hamdok's home in Khartoum seemed to be surrounded by the military early Monday local time. Numerous government ministers and officials have been arrested, the Information Ministry said, as well as witnesses to the arrests. The ministry added that military forces also stormed Sudan's state broadcaster in the nearby city of Omdurman and detained workers. The ministry also said Sudan's leader is under pressure to release a statement in support of the takeover, but had called on the people to take to the streets in protest. The ministry said in the Facebook post, Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, in a message from his house arrest, asked the Sudanese to adhere to peaceful means of protest and occupy the streets to defend their revolution. No reports that could independently verify the claims. However, family members said the Minister of Information was one of the several senior officials detained. Among those arrested by joint military forces include various civilian ministers of Sudan's transitional government and members of Sudan's Sovereign Council, the Information Ministry said. Members belonging to the civilian components of the Transitional Sovereign Council and a member of ministers of the transitional government were arrested by joint military forces and taken to unknown destinations, according to the statement. Reports also from a civil aviation authorities source said flights from Khartoum International Airport have also been suspended, while the Ministry of Information said internet services had been cut off from mobile phone networks and bridges were closed by military forces. Military and civilian groups have been distributing powers in the East African country in an uneasy alliance dubbed the Sovereign Council since the toppling of long-standing President Omar al-Bashir in 2019. But following a failed coup attempt in September attributed to forces loyal to Bashir, military leaders have been demanding reforms to the Forces of Freedom and Change (FFC) coalition and the replacement of the cabinet. Civilian leaders, however, have accused them of aiming for a power grab, and Sudan is now grappling with the biggest political crisis in its two-year-old transition. Still in Sudan, civilian leaders in Sudan arrested amidst rumors of a coup. A government source said unidentified gunmen arrested numerous Sudanese leaders early on Monday at their homes after weeks of tension between the military and civilian transitional authorities in the East African country. The internet was cut off throughout the country, reports said, while demonstrators assembled in the street to protest against the arrest, setting fire to tires. The events come just 2 days after a Sudanese faction calling for a transfer of power to civilian rule warned of a creeping coup at a press conference that a mass of unidentified people sought to prevent. The country has been experiencing an unwarranted transition marred by political divisions and power struggles since the coup that removed President Omar al-Bashir from power in April 2019. Since August 2019, the country has been ruled by a civilian military administration charged with overseeing the transition to an all-civilian regime. The main civilian bloc, the Forces for Freedom and Change, FFC, which led the anti-Bashir protests in 2019, has split into two opposing factions. FFC leader Yasser Arman said at a press conference in the capital, Khartoum, on Saturday, the current crisis is artificial and is taking the form of a creeping coup. He added that we renew our confidence in the government, Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, and in the reform of the transitional institutions, but without order or imposition. Tension between the two sides have long existed, but the divisions were worsened after the failed coup on September 21st. Tens of thousands of Sudanese marched in several cities to support the full transfer of power to civilians last week and to counter a rival multi-day sit-in outside the presidential palace in the capital, Khartoum, which demanded a return to military rule. Mr. Hamdok has previously described the divisions within the transitional government as the most serious and dangerous crisis facing the transition. Mr. Hamdok denied rumors that he had agreed to a cabinet reshuffle, calling them not accurate on Saturday. The Prime Minister also stressed that he did not monopolize the right to decide the fate of the transitional institutions. Also on Saturday, the United States Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Jeffrey Feltman, met jointly with Hamdok, the chairman of Sudan's governing body, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and paramilitary commander Mohammed Hamdan Daglo. The U.S. Embassy in Khartoum said Mr. Feldman emphasized United States support for a civilian democratic transition in accordance with the expressed wishes of the Sudanese people. Analysts say recent mass demonstrations show strong backing for a civilian-led democracy, but street protests may have little impact on powerful factions pushing for a return to military rule. Police says the explosion in Uganda an act of domestic terror. On Sunday, Ugandan police said a deadly explosion that killed one person and injured 3 others at a roadside eatery in the capital, Kampala, was an act of domestic terror. The assailants arrived at the popular grilled pork joint in northern Kampala at around 8:30 p.m. on Saturday, carrying a plastic shopping bag that they placed under a table, police spokesman Fred Enanga said. Shortly after leaving, 30 minutes later, an explosion ripped through the eatery. The suspects ignited the device after they left the scene, Enanga told reporters, describing the explosive as crude and containing nails and metal fragments. All indications suggest an act of domestic terror. President Yoweri Museveni had earlier said that the blast seems to be a terrorist act and vowed to hunt down those responsible. He said the public should not fear. We shall defeat this criminality like we have defeated all the other criminality committed by the pigs who don't respect life. Enanga said the group appeared unsophisticated and investigators believed they could track their whereabouts using evidence found at the scene. They did not give detailed information on the identity or motivation of the suspected attackers. And that's all for the news at this hour. Optimism is the one quality more associated with success and happiness than any other, according to Brian Tracy. Let this be your watchword for this week. Have a blessed day and a week ahead. Bye-bye.